You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Mark Reed and Ted Durden, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to another edition to The Voice of Reason. My name is Ted Durden. I'm a Southern Democrat.
And my name is Mark Reed, a West Coast Republican.
And for those of you who have tuned in for the first time, this podcast is a politically motivated show where civil discourse is the order of the day, where Mark and I believe there are more things that unite us than there are that divide us.
Right.
And together we are the voice of reason. Having said that, as I always do, I toss the ball over to Mark.
Well, I think everybody has been getting sick and tired of the impeachment process and everybody having conversations about this and that. Trump has done this, Trump has done that. And the newest one now is this whole garbage about the whistleblower. And the whistleblower is driving us nuts in that sense that you know, Adam Schiff just wants to open it up. Nancy Pelosi has caved into the progressive left, and they want to open up another impeachment. And they did this, Ted, even prior to getting all of the information. That's like trying to start a trial without having the discovery and the evidence, right?
Well,
how can you do that?
Well, they might have jumped the gun a little bit, but I think
I
think the reason they did. I think the reason that they did it, though, is I think was just based upon the allegation, and especially when you consider the source of it. And I think that's the reason that they did. I think, like any situation, they should have made sure that they had all the facts in place before they would have launched into the impeachment proceedings. Now that I agree with you 100%. But even myself.
Did you read the released?
I did. Yeah, I did read it. I have my concerns.
Not the telephone conversation. I'm talking about the whistleblower's letter to Richard Barr. And also to Adam Schiff.
No, I didn't read that part. Okay, what I read the telephone call that was made.
This letter that was sent to the chairman of the Select Committee of Intelligence to Adam Schiff and to Richard Barr is probably one of the worst biased letters I've ever seen, especially when you put it together with the actual, and I have them both here. I have the report that was given by the whistleblower to the chairmen of the committees, and then I have, as you have, I have the telephone conversation. Okay. Now, if you look at the reality of the telephone conversation, this has been going on for how many decades? Of presidents having private conversations
with world leaders,
and also with their cabinet members.
Absolutely.
And let me tell you, you have a public persona. It's like me on my ranch. Okay. If you heard me on my ranch, you would say I wasn't fit for public office because, you know, I just speak truthfully, blatantly, bluntly, and you're just, but that's not proper etiquette for the real world.
No, of course not.
Okay, and my mama taught me that by stuffing bars of soap in my mouth when I cussed and swear. It's not proper conversations to have around children.
Right.
But yet in the privacy in your own domain, which is the White House when he's talking to heads of state, okay, he's talking to cabinet members, he's going to be blunt. He's going to tell them exactly what he wants because his schedule is scheduled out in probably 3-minute, 5-minute intervals. So he's got to get his point straight across. Now, after reading the letter that was sent to the two chairmen, you know, to Richard Barr and to Adam Schiff, and then I looked at the telephone conversation, I'm like, my God, what a difference.
Well,
he didn't say me in it. He didn't say I want you to do me a favor.
Right.
That's a critical word.
No, it is, because what he said is I want you to do us a favor. Now, Of course, the us in that vernacular, he was talking about the United States government. That's what he was talking about. So, and I was a little bothered by that when I heard the gentleman that was testifying, and he said that he was doing it for personal reasons. Now, if he was going to do it for personal reasons, he would have said, do me a favor, but he said, do us a favor. So he was acting in the capacity as the President of the United States.
Yeah,
that's what he was doing.
And then they're putting up this whole BS thing that he was holding back, you know, the aid, the military aid. No, we've been giving $250 million on around September 11th every year, okay? President Trump, a few months back in August, he said, let's see how the new president of Ukraine acts. Is he willing to play ball? Is he going to uphold what he ran on? And that was cleaning up the corruption in his own country. That's why he won in a landslide.
Well, and I'm going to tell you this too now. you have to look at it, and I'm going to analogize. If you remember, sometimes it's about characterization. Sometimes it's just an issue, or where sometimes it's just coincidental. And this is what I mean by that. If you recall, when Obama was in office, there was money that was sent to, I think it was Iran, $250 million that the United States had held back because of the fact that we believe that Iran was supporting terrorists in this country.
Well, that was in the billions of dollars.
Okay, was the billions?
Not,
Okay,
not
so
250 million. I want
so
a little
billion.
bit.
So
it's billion.
So what happened is there was already a prearranged release date for that money to go back to them, but it just so happened that it coincided when there were hostages that were released. Now, the way that was played out in the media was like, and admittedly, the way that some Republicans portrayed it as well, was that he was paying Iran for the release of hostages, and that's not what was doing. And the same thing could be said here, because if it makes sense that if we have this money that we're going to give to the Ukraine, we want to make sure that they're acting as well, not in just their best interest, but our best interest as well, because we're giving them $250 million.
Well, look at it this way, too. To think that the United States doesn't put strings on the money to aid that we give countries.
Oh, that's just naive.
It's just ignorant as all.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
all
it is.
up,
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, what do you say? Can't give a fork, you know?
Yeah, right.
It's a fork, you know? It's like, come on.
Exactly, right.
You know,
right.
We do put strings on it. We've put strings on it all along. We just haven't been made aware of these strings in the past. So.
Right.
When we looked at the Ukraine, we understand that they were as corrupt as possible. And we said, well, okay, President Trump is dealing with the new president of Ukraine. He says, okay, let's see what he's going to do. Well, this president of Ukraine came out and he passed all kinds of new laws dealing with the corruption. He has a new corruption court to deal with people, the oligarchs there, that are corrupt in their business practices. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. So President Trump called him when he first won office. He
congratulated him.
Congratulated him. He called him up again, and congratulated him on the formation of his government, his cabinet.
And what he also said, he borrowed one of Trump's phrases when he said, "I plan to drain the swamp."
Drain the swamp.
He used the exact same phraseology that Trump did.
Yeah. So you look at it, you say, okay, President Trump thinks he's got a guy he can play ball with to help clean up Europe.
Right.
Okay. Clean up the Ukraine. Put Putin kind of in check. So. All of that stuff is great, but these telephone conversations have been notoriously held private, where they can get into whatever trash can talk that they want to get into. Now, when it gets to pen and paper and legislation, then we have a real serious, oversight, and that's where Congress gets into. But every president, I was shocked. A couple of the news reports I watched today, I watched some of the conversations between LBJ. President Kennedy.
Oh, right, yeah, right.
And I remember listening to several of them from President Nixon and Henry Kissinger, and I was like, whoa, they actually talk like that in the office.
Yeah.
You get shocked because you always see them in their PR mode, in their PC modes out there, and you think that they're these Jiminy Crickets, clean, a freshman coming out of college. No, these guys know the street.
Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Franklin Delano, come on, he was notorious for profane-laden speeches in private. He was known for that. So again, like I said, what they do in private is what they do in private.
So for Americans to act all lily white shocked is like, come on.
Well,
all of us have those moments.
Well, see, it's not even so much that. Again, all the phone calls in the White House, they are recorded. That's a given. I think.
Well, these aren't even recorded. In the past, they're recorded. This one here, they have people from the intel community.
About a dozen. They're
listening in.
Right.
And just like court reporters, they're taking it all down.
Okay,
and then they cross-reference every single one of them to make sure that they get the exact conversation that's going on. Then it's put into an archive, and these are all considered classified.
Now, see,
they're not for general public consumption.
Right.
They're not for the consumption of Congress or the Senate or for the general intel population either. So the first thing you have to look at in this whole scandal, okay, because remember, General Petraeus got completely thrown out, got his pension taken away, almost got prosecuted for what? Telling top secret stuff to his girlfriend while they are having relations.
Right.
Okay, now you've got 12 individuals, top secret clearance, listening in on a president's phone call, taking down the notes, and now sending it out. And I think I'll put this on my website, markreedforcongress.com. and it's the letter from this whistleblower.
Right.
And maybe on the break you can skim it real fast. It is one of the most bipartisan, not bipartisan, partisan, bias,
right,
partisan hack jobs I've ever seen in my life. It comes to so many assumptions in it.
Well, see, and that's perfect. That's perfect.
Yes.
Because, see, it always comes down to characterization and
Yes.
your perception of what is being said or what is being discussed. You know, it's like in any criminal act. It goes to intent, what your intent was. Because the way that the conversation is being portrayed is that President Trump, quote unquote, pressured the Ukrainian president into investigating Biden. Now, again, we might be getting into semantics, but I don't think so. I never got the impression that he pressured him. Someone said it was akin to what a godfather would do, you know, who's running the mafia, because what he does is he says, look, and they're going back and forth. He's talking about what the United States has done for Ukraine, the money they give him, congratulating him, so forth and so on. Then he says, hey, can you do us a favor? Can you look into this and look into that? To me, that doesn't qualify as pressure. But I'm going to go back to something that happened when Bill Clinton was being impeached. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
And he said,
All right.
It all depends on what your definition of is. Okay? So again, everybody's perception is their reality. But you have to look at what his intent was. And I don't think he was trying to pressure the Ukrainian leader. I don't think he was.
Not based on the telephone
No,
call.
not based on the phone call that I read, no.
Absolutely not. And he wasn't holding back or holding it up or anything else like that. And it really boils down to what, like you said, what is your intent?
Because even when it was brought to, I don't think it was brought to the DOJ, but when it was brought to the national security, they said, well, he didn't do anything wrong. That's what they said. He didn't do anything wrong.
That's why they buried it.
Right.
They said it was a politically biased complaint, and he didn't do anything wrong. We're not taking it to that level. We're not going to submit it.
No.
And, you know, it's like you said, in the intent. Remember down south, you have that phrase, you know, bless your soul.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's not a very sweet comment, is it?
No, it's not.
Or bless your little heart, right? I mean, there's a couple of them. And I always remember the was have a nice day, you know, and you're just, you know, when you're ticked off at somebody.
Right.
So the PC conversation, but I really believe, myself personally, the Democrats have completely gone off the rails in D.C. right now. They're desperate to win 2020.
Well, and the one thing is, you know, you have to keep your finger on the pulse of the American people. And then the Republicans learned a very hard lesson when they went to impeach Bill Clinton. And they lost the House and they lost the Senate.
Yep.
And I think the Democrats are running.
Clinton's popularity went up to what, 63 to 67?
Yeah, like 67%. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And they're treading on very thin ice here, because the American people don't want to see that. I don't care what the cacophony in the House is. The American people don't want to see a sitting president impeached. Now, what happened with Nixon was totally different, because there were tapes. So there was evidence of wrongdoing, but not in this situation here. Not in this situation here.
Absolutely not. We're going to stop on that note right there. That's our first segment on one of the biggest topics of the issues of the day, in which, you know, our press is going to be stuck on like, you know, Wolverines for the next, you know, several months.
Going into 2020.
We have a special guest who's going to be coming on our show right after this advertisement here. But Jack Humphreville is a neighborhood council budget advocate and a contributor to City Watch. If you guys have never logged into City Watch, I think some of the most pertinent information you can get on City Watch all the time of what's happening in the city of Los Angeles and what's happening in the mayor's office. And he's online participation that focuses on the issues, and this is what City Watch does, focuses on the issues of interest to Angelenos. He comes on as the budget and finance. He comments on the budgets and the finance of the city of Los Angeles and the Department of Water Power. I've asked him to come onto the show because I think everybody is complaining about where's our money going.
Oh my God!
$720,000 for a bachelor, not even a bachelor unit, a studio unit for the homeless.
Crazy, crazy.
Which I can build 3,000 square foot houses with 5 bedrooms, a kitchen, 3-car garage for $350,000 a piece. and that's not even including the wraparound services afterwards.
No, exactly.
The homeless
and all the other amenities, right.
The homeless industrial complex was created in New York and went to San Francisco, and now it's coming to Los Angeles, and it is horrible. They have to get rid of this perception of perfect housing and get to shelter housing and services and identifying what they need. So when we come back after paying our bills, when we come back, Jack will be with us, and it's going to be great. So stay tuned, and if you want to call in and ask a question, just dial 818-570-5085, and you can talk to us and ask a pertinent question that's really on your mind about what the heck is going on in the city of Los Angeles.
There
Jack?
we go. We are brought to you by Paintball USA. For the best paintball experience of your life, call 661-255-5332. Ask for April and mention the Voice of Reason and get a 25% discount off all regular priced packages. If you want a fantastic outing for the family and friends, or if you're a corporation looking for that magic team building experience, check out Paintball USA. All packages include admission, air gun rental, complete safety equipment, party favors, and 500 paintballs to use accordingly. That's Paintball USA at 661-255-5332. And don't forget to mention the Voice of Reason to get your 25% discount. The Voice of Reason is also brought to you by churchandlaw.com, 818-230-3110. If you have any questions or need legal advice about workers' compensation, employment, and labor law, call churchandlaw.com, 818-230-3110. The Voice of Reason is also brought to you by Honda. Additionally, The Voice of Reason is brought to you by Levin and Nalbandian Trial Lawyers at 213-232-4848. If you have any workers' compensation, employment, and labor law or personal injury legal needs, call Levin and Nalbandian at 213-232-4848.
Welcome back to the Voice of Reason with Ted Durden and Mark Reed, and Jack Humphreville is now joined. He's got one of the most interesting last names. I've always had a hard time saying it. I brought you on, Jack, because I think that most of my constituents that I talk to on a daily basis always ask the question, what the hell is going on in the city of Los Angeles' budget? Right. And the biggest question everybody asks, is about the homeless, and homelessness at what cost? $720,000. The big one was when they built that deck in Los Angeles. I think it was by Alvaro Street area. It was $350,000 for the decking around that homeless facility they made. But it's gotten to the point where each unit for a homeless person is costing the city of Los Angeles taxpayers about $533,000 to $700,000 a piece. And as I mentioned before we went on break, I can build a house. Two houses
right,
for that amount of money.
Right.
And give us your perspective on that. With the HHH money, the committees, because you being a budget advocate, you're kind of privy to more information than we are. And I know that the committee, the HHH committee, was kind of meeting in secret, no accountability for a long time. And I think they kind of still are. Because I think if people really had an open what do you call it? What's the word? Open. It's open.
If it was more transparent.
Is the word. I was losing my mind. I was having a Rick Perry right there. Transparent.
It's age.
It is. I can snow on the roof. There's lights out in the cockpit. But more of a transparent process, and understanding that permanent housing or perfect housing is not what the majority of these homeless people need. They need real services, mental health care, they need drug rehabilitation, right, vocational training. And how are we failing?
Well, I can't say that I'm an expert on the homeless situation. And one of the problems that I have is it gets into how do you figure out what all these things are costing?
Right.
For example, they just did something over in Gardner Street for temporary housing. They call it bridge housing.
Yeah, the bridge housing, right.
And it was basically cost, I think, $150,000 per bed. It cost throw in the value of the land, it was about $1,100 per square foot. I mean, let's go to Beverly Hills for crying out loud.
Right, and that's just insane.
That was the one they redid the library.
Yeah,
for.
it's the old Durant.
Unbelievable.
The old
Right.
Durant Library.
Yes.
But I had to really dig for that information. It's just not all that readily available. You call up people at City Hall, and they don't really answer, or they don't know. You look in the city. You look into the council file and various other documents. Getting the real scoop on how much it costs per unit, per foot, per bed, it's very tough to understand. Now, I went over to Hollywood the other day and toured 4 of these temporary bridge places, and it was a disaster. I mean, they didn't seem to be well manned.
Really?
This one over in Schrader Street, I mean, they had all sorts of nutcases running around, and it was just sort of frightening. And the people that were there supervising, I thought they were more part of the problem than the solution.
Well, I've read that on the website of what do you call it? LA Family Housing, I think it is that they say that the upper staff is not listening to the lower staff. So they're completely disconnected of what the services are actually doing. Now, I know on that Durant Street one, they were talking about the cost of the building, renovation of the building, and then the cost of operations. It was like $1.8 million, I think.
No. The cost of operations is going. They've entered into a service contract,
Right.
$60 a day per bed, so that's $1,800 a day, and it's $567,000 a year. Then the city city is responsible for maintaining the building,
Right.
which I will say a year is $100,000 a year. You have to take care. It's not only taking care of the little lawn it is, and
Right.
making sure things are clean, but it's also making sure that the air conditioning units and the
heating,
roof and
water.
all
The
that kind of
maintenance, right.
general maintenance.
Right.
And then you probably and then you have the interest on the bonds, the HHH
Right.
bonds, and that's
Right.
about $300,000 a year. So you're talking $1 million.
Okay.
Pretty easily.
Well, let me ask you something, though, because I appreciate because what we're doing right here, folks, we're trying to follow the money.
Yes.
So my question is, and I think we might even had this on one of the prior shows. Are these open bids, or who determines what the cost is? Like you said, $1,100 per square foot, and I know that's once all other factors are calculated as well, because I think initially it was $875, but once other factors were built in, then it became $1,100 per square foot. So are these open bids? Are these closed bids? I mean, who's determining what the cost of this is going to be, and who is it open to make these bids?
Well, that's actually one of the interesting things, is that I think the Gardner Street facility was done by city workers. And so that doesn't go out to bid, the city's doing it. And that either says, it says 2 things to me. 1, they're probably not well managed, and 2, they're overpaid or overstaffed. And, this is not the fault of the workers. I think this is a sort of a management issue. If you have too many people too many people on the job, and somebody's sitting around scratching their butt,
Right.
It just seems like it was out of control.
Okay.
I think the city. I think the problem one of the problems you have here is just the whole city contracting process. If they go to outside parties, you have these requests. What do they call it? An RFP, a request for proposals.
Right.
It takes forever. I mean, it's not like you're in private enterprise and you say, "Hey, Ted, I want you to build something. What's your bid?" And you say, "Okay, we go." Well, with the city, you have to fill out all these forms. You've got to sign all these contracts. You're
So just a lot of bureaucratic red tape.
You're talking 100 pages of crap, and that's being real polite. You have to worry about, do you have any relationship with the Iranian, the Iranians and stuff like that.
Now the NRA.
No, that's San
It's a different
Francisco.
conversation. Right.
But it's very difficult to do business with the city. They're tied up in bureaucracy, and on HHH you have an HHH oversight, citizens oversight committee.
Okay.
And I don't know any of those folks in there. I think they tend to be more political appointments as opposed to somebody that can really knows a lot about construction or knows anything about finance. I think they're pals. You have the Administrative Oversight Committee, which I think is the CAO and a group of insiders, and they're going to do what Eric tells them to do. And Eric hasn't met a permanent supportive housing or a bridge home he doesn't like, the hell with the costs. I mean, he said that in one of his press conferences. We're not looking at costs. Meanwhile, the city's going broke. Despite having our revenues up 50%, $2 billion over the last since Eric came to office. Are our streets any better?
Do you think the bureaucracy that they've made it so insanely difficult that they're weeding out all of the smaller companies from bidding onto it, and they have the regulars that they go to because now the regulars know the system. And as soon as these bids come up for the regulars, all of a sudden the guys approving the contracts, oh, we know this one's good.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I've never bid on one of these city contracts.
Because I know a lot of people, businesses of color, which, interests you, businesses of color have basically been shunned out because the bureaucracy
they've been cut out.
is unbelievable.
Period. Absolutely.
Well, the bonding processes.
But you look, actually, that's one of the problems that you have with the city is somebody gets a contract, but one of your bidding things is, are using minority contractors, right. Women, small businesses, women, blacks, Asians, whatever the hell it is.
Exactly.
And you got to check off all these boxes, and they grade you on this stuff. Again, that's getting very complicated. As to the whole minority contracting.
Rather than looking at the bottom line, can you deliver this for this much money?
Yeah, but some of the thing isn't the bottom line. Oftentimes it's who scratches whose back, who do you know?
A lot of nepotism, a lot of favoritism.
Right,
favoritism. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, and I think Mark and I both know that in any city, state, or local government, you're going to run into that at all levels of bureaucracy. The one thing that just astounds me is that you use the term oversight, but there's no oversight. There's no one auditing this department. There's no one looking at what the actual cost or what a reasonable cost. Like you said, $150,000 for a bed?
Yeah.
For one bed.
Yeah. This stuff of independent oversight is a complete crock. They're not appointing people that are going to really raise hell and analyze the numbers, analyze the performance. You're talking.
If they raise hell, they get fired, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a commissioner for the city of Los Angeles, you've signed an undated resignation.
Mm-hmm.
So Eric doesn't like what you want. Okay, September 27th, you're
gone.
gone.
Yep.
Mark, see you later. Have a nice day. Ted, see you later. I was going to fire you yesterday, so let me date it for yesterday.
Now, when you talked about the RFPs, have you ever seen one? Do you have an experience? So what do they look like? What?
It's they say what they want to do, and then there's all sorts of gobbledygook in there. It's how we're gonna score you. Here's what the job is, and then you usually have a ton of city boilerplate.
They announce the RFPs in the Daily News and the LA Times. You can look at them there. You can go online. The contractors are kind of well versed with it. They check online all the time.
You're going to pay the prevailing wage. You're going to pay a living wage. You're going to abide by all the various rules and regulations of the city of Los Angeles. And I was looking at something today for the Department of Water and Power, their procedures memo for feed-in tariffs. It was 145 pages.
What?
145 pages, and this wasn't with a lot of pretty pictures either. Now granted, a lot of it's boilerplate,
right.
But the Department of Water and Power gets bogged down in the city process. Try and hire somebody if you're at the city of Los Angeles. It's probably a 9-month type of deal. You have to go through all sorts of stuff and take all sorts of tests, and they got to find the spot for you, and it's ridiculous.
We're going to go ahead and take a break now
okay.
and pay our bills, and when we come back, I want to talk about the city services, and even though the city of Los Angeles has got a lot more money flowing through their coffers, but yet city services are completely backlogged and they're not there anymore. For the Angelinos in the city of Los Angeles.
Well, it's even worse than that, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm feeding you here.
Okay.
So we're gonna keep on following that money.
Yeah, we're gonna pay our bills now. So enjoy.
We are brought to you by Paintball USA. For the best paintball experience of your life, call 661-255-5332. Ask for April and mention the Voice of Reason and get a 25% discount off all regular priced packages. If you want a fantastic outing for the family and friends, or if you're a corporation looking for that magic team building experience, check out Paintball USA. All packages include admission, air gun rental, complete safety equipment, party favors, and 500 paintballs to use accordingly. That's Paintball USA at 661-255-5332. And don't forget to mention the Voice of Reason to get your 25% discount. The Voice of Reason is also brought to you by churchandlaw.com, 818-230-3110. If you have any questions or need legal advice about workers' compensation, employment, and labor law, call churchandlaw.com, 818-230-3110. The Voice of Reason is also brought to you by Honda. Additionally, The Voice of Reason is brought to you by Levin and Nalbandian Trial Lawyers at 213-232-4848. If you have any workers' compensation, employment, and labor law or personal injury legal needs, call Levin and Nalbandian at 213-232-4848.
Hi, I want to welcome Rusty Levin and Harry Nabanian, both trial lawyers for workman comp cases. If you're injured on the job, don't hesitate. Contact an attorney. I did when I was wounded or injured on my job, and I thought I would trust my employer, and it didn't work out quite well, so I found Rusty Levin. Handled my case like a professional, worked out way better than any other lawyer that I talked to would have worked out. So Rusty, tell us a little bit about your company of Levin and Nabanian Trial Lawyers.
So at our firm at Levin Albania Trial Lawyers, we handle all matters of workers' compensation, personal injury, and employment disputes, wrongful termination matters, and things like that. We were able to help Mr. Reed out with his workers' compensation case. Unfortunately, workers' compensation injury can be very stressful, intense situation. And at Levin Albanian, we try to get you the most benefit we can of the law, while also easing the stress and anxiety that comes along with that situation, and getting you back on your feet. My partner, Mr. Nalbandian, he handles the personal injury sides, and I'll let him take it from there.
And just like all injured employees out there, anybody else who gets injured as a result of somebody else's negligence has rights, and the rights that they need to protect immediately. And they should do that by calling Levin and Albanian Trial Lawyers and letting us help ease that tension off of you and get you the result you deserve, while also making sure that you get better in the progress. So we're here for you, folks.
Levin and Nabanian Trial Lawyers is the best company for you to get a hold of when you're injured or have a personal injury. So give them a call at
213-232-4848, 213-232-4848. Thank you.
And let them handle the stress for you while you recover at home. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
The power of dreams. I am the front man who drives. My power keeps me ahead in the front line. My reputation gets me on the front page. This is how I drive superiority. By being in the front row.
Listening to the Voice of Reason with Mark Reed and Ted Durden with our special guest, Jack Humphreville.
Okay, Jack.
Well, welcome back to the show. I'm sure you're finding some of this information interesting, but probably pissing you off, and you're already breaking into the Jack Daniels right now.
Right.
Jack, I wanted to talk.
I like the Johnny Walker Black.
Johnny
Thank
Walker
you very much.
Anyways, we were talking a little bit off of mic here about the intergenerational theft because of the budgets, the lack of city services, how even though there's, I remember a city worker, United City Workers within the city council, believe it or not, he said, look, He goes, this is getting really scary. We're seeing more and more money here, but yet there's not enough money to even fix potholes, replace signs, street lights, and things like this. That coming from one of the city councilmen, right, or council people, I'll have to say, I can't point him out as being a man, but city council people, is actually scary in itself, because we have a huge budget. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the intergenerational theft and the lack of city services and what's happening in the budgets.
Well, over the last 6 years, ever since Eric Garcetti became mayor, our revenue, the city general fund revenues are up about $2 billion. 45%, call it 50% for giggles.
Okay.
The problem is that most of that money has gone to pay, civil,
Civil employees.
the public employees, whether it's the cops, the firefighters, or the civilian laborers. I mean, they've had some very generous contracts. But what you see is, yes, the revenues are up, and yes, they're going to tell you that we've eliminated the structural deficit. I don't buy that. Because when you start to include the raises that they don't put into the projections, proper funding for the infrastructure, let's say that's a couple $100 million, $250 million a year, proper funding of reserves for like when the spaghetti and meatballs hit the fan, when the economy doesn't so hot, that's probably another $50 million. And then when you consider they're underfunding the pensions by about $500 million, $500 million a year, in 3 or 4 years, the structural deficit's $1 billion in the hole. So where's that money going to come from? It's going to come from two places. First of all, they're going to cut back on some of our services. So our streets our lunar cratered streets, as I like to call them, aren't going to be fixed. Our parks are going to still be a mess, and Ron Galpern did an excellent report on our parks and just the sad state that the bathrooms in the parks were in.
Oh yeah.
So you're going to have the lack of city services, and the other thing is they're going to roll over that debt, and they're going to dump it on the next generation or next 2 generations of Angelinos. So you have a structural deficit, you have what I call a service deficit, and then you have intergenerational theft, where we're going to be dumping billions and billions and billions of dollars on the next generation of Angelinos. The city's debt is not all that big. It's probably a couple $1 billion. You have some other money that's floated with a sewer.
I like how you just said that.
I don't know, right?
That's a couple $1 billion.
I'll take half of that as my salary. I'm good.
I'll take that as my net worth. Thank you very much. Hell of the salary.
Wow.
Just saying.
Jack, you've been around politics too long.
Relatively speaking, that's
Right.
not a lot of money.
True.
But you got a $15 billion unfunded pension liability.
Right.
You got a deferred maintenance budget of $10 billion. That's $25 billion. That's like $6,000 a person, and they have no intention of paying this damn thing off. So it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of time to do this, and they're not addressing that issue. They're fat, dumb, and happy. The economy is rip roaring. When we hit a downturn, which is going to come at some point in time,
Right.
It's going to be ugly. Now, they're telling us that, we're going to remake our economy. It's the Green New Deal, and that's going to, that's going to be all sorts of new jobs. Well, there's a lot of thought that's going on. Is that the Green New Deal jobs are not going to be the equivalent of the jobs that there are before. The guys that are working for the IBEW fixing up the coastal power plants, that's a lot more complicated than, washing a solar panel.
Right.
It's like building cars. When you have batteries, they're not as many moving parts. So, they're blowing a lot of smoke at us, in our face when they're starting to talk about all these great jobs that they are. So this economy is going to hit something's going to happen, and it's going to be pretty ugly for the city services, and they're not going to be able to cut back. They're not going to have adequate reserves, and it probably is not going to be as bad as it was during the Villaraigosa era when they did those 25% wage increase over 5 years. Right, but it still could get pretty ugly. And at the same time, the public sector unions want to grow the workforce, and that's a big stumbling block now. They want to increase the workforce by 5,000 people. From my perspective, they already have too many, of civilian workers,
Right.
And it's going to be tough.
Well, one of the things that I know that we've talked about quite a few times, when you look at the city of Los Angeles, one of the first cities in the state of California to raise the minimum wage up to $15
an hour.
That drove a lot of businesses out of here, creating an underclass. But we're gonna really get into that. I'm laying this next show out completely for that. But you look at the push now for artificial intelligence. It's going to replace quite a few of the jobbers here. The what do you call it? The repetitive jobs that are done. And that's going to displace even more workers. And this is going to boom in about 10 to 15 years.
I can't speak to the $15 an hour. That's just not my wheelhouse. But you're going to see automation come, and we just had a huge altercation down at the port. One of the big Maersk, they wanted to put in a lot of automated equipment.
Right.
The ILWU went ape, and they were holding it up for about $1.5 million project. And Maersk is thinking of spending like $1 billion to automate this terminal.
Right.
But they have to automate it in order to keep their costs down. Now, we're already a high cost port, and so all of a sudden, if you're going to be the high cost port, people shipping in from Asia are going to say, well, hell, I'm going to go through the Panama Canal.
Exactly.
I'm going to go to Savannah, Georgia, or Charleston, South Carolina, or Houston, Texas, New Orleans, and I'm just going to blow by it. And so the amount of discretionary cargo coming into the port is going to be a lot less.
Now, isn't that also really contributing to why I'm having a hard time with words today. The contributing factor is the investment of our pension funds as well, and the complete lack of oversight of what we're supposed to be getting in return of the investment. And that's why we have a major deficit on our pension liabilities.
Well, the pension liabilities are, it's a function of two things. One is they're not making their rate of return, which is now 7.25%. There's this knucklehead that comes from Omaha, Nebraska, named Warren Buffett, and he's just a hayseed, and he says, well, 6% is the right number. So, but the light bulbs down at the city are saying, we're smarter, we're going to be at 7.25.
Right.
So there's something wrong there.
Right.
But you have another thing that's going on in addition to the low returns is that they're always tinkering with various benefits, and people are living longer. So you start tweaking, let's say, living a little bit longer, that's going to increase it by a couple of $1 billion. You get it where, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit more of a benefit. Well, that's a couple of $1 billion. And you get all these little goodies that come in there. So we're now at $15 billion. At 6.25%, we're $15 billion short. I think it's like 70% funded, or no, it's lower than that. Call it 70% funded, which is difficult. And they're not going out there and doing anything about it. They put in some new tiers, but they're still relying on the 7.25%.
Right.
And
how do you think we should mitigate that? Create an oversight committee of some kind?
Well,
or
first,
a real one, a real financial one?
Well, first of all, we've been asking for, or at the LA 2020 Commission with Mickey Cantor and Austin Butner put together, and they wanted a pension committee to sit down there and study it and make some recommendations.
Right.
And Herb Wesson at the at the conference back in 2014 said, "What a great idea." It never made it to a council file. It was
not at all.
No, not even to a council file. And we've been we, the neighborhood council budget advocates, have been bugging Eric for one of these things.
Right.
Oh, I'm thinking about it. Well, it's the biggest liability that we have.
Yes, it is, because it eats up so much of the economy. It really does, and of the budget. Not so much that it eats so much of the budget. It does.
From my perspective, I think we probably ought to have, as opposed to having a defined contribution, we ought to have a defined as opposed to having a defined benefit, we ought to have a defined contribution or some combination thereof, so that you can start to mitigate the risk that the city's taking, which is your mortality as well as your investment rate of return. And getting the city out of that business is good. It used to be in the old days that they used to say city employees were underpaid, but they got great benefits, medical and pensions.
Correct.
Now, if you look at any legitimate study, they're getting paid higher than the private sector, and the benefits are, you don't find those kind of benefits.
No, you don't.
in the
That's the
private
crown
sector.
jewel. The benefits of the crown jewel.
Yeah, I mean, and then the other one on pensions is you can retire at 50 or 50. If you're a cop and you do 3 and 30, you put in 30 years and you're 50, 55, you can retire at 90% of what you made.
Right.
And then you double dip. It's like, okay, I'm going to collect this pension.
We're going to get into that subject here, because I'd like where you're going with that, because we've got to pay our bills right now.
Okay.
We're going to do one more advertisement.
All right.
And we're going to finalize this up with the
And then
double
we'll
dipping.
really fry 'em.
The double dipping things, and there's several. We know several people
That do that.
I wish I were doing it myself.
I do. I wish I was smarter when I was younger and got about 4 different city jobs and state
No,
jobs.
no.
Riding high on the
you
the
would have been
horse.
shot.
Maybe.
That mouth of yours,
They wanna
boom,
shoot-
you're
they
gone.
Want, they want to shoot me already, just running for office.
I see that
But
all
we'll
the
see you in a
time.
minute.
The Voice of Reason is brought to you by churchandlaw.com. 818-230-3110. If you have any questions or need legal advice about workers' compensation, employment, and labor law, call churchandlaw.com at 818-230-3110. The Voice of Reason is also brought to you by Honda. Additionally, The Voice of Reason is brought to you by Levin and Nalbandian Trial Lawyers at 213-232-4848. If you have any workers' compensation, employment and labor law, or personal injury legal needs, call Levin and Nalbandian Trial Lawyers at 213-232-4848. And now, back to The Voice of Reason.
Welcome back to the Voice of Reason. We're with Jack Humphrey, Ted Durden, and myself. We're talking about the city's budget, and we started getting into the double dipping. And I think some of the candidates that have run for political office in the past have been nailed on this, and that is you can become an LAPD cop, retire after about 20 years. You get a pension, you become a state assemblyman, you serve out your 3 terms there, you get a pension, you become a state senator, you serve out your 3 terms there, you get a state pension, and then you come back to the city you belong to, and you become a city councilman. And I believe 9 or close to 10 of our city councilmen are former state assembly and state senators. So it's the double, triple, quadruple dipping into the pension issues. And I remember every time, Jack, I would go up to my supermarket by my house and ask me, "Do you sign this, for term limits?" And I said, I'm all for term limits so long as you attach the qualifier that you can only get 1 pension. That's it. The 1 pension, your highest pension, whatever you say. But this quadruple, triple dipping, and because we both know names, I'm not going to say them, but it's crazy, isn't it?
I'm not so sure that's right. Is that if you're in this, if you let's say work for the city and then go to the state house and then come back to work for the city, I don't think you're collecting the pension or you're not double dipping during there. Now, if you retired from the police force, which has its own pension plan, like Dennis Zine did, and then
I wasn't going to say the name.
Yeah. But maybe he's eligible. If you're under the fire and police pension plans, which is maybe separate from Lacers, you might be able to double dip. But if you keep on going, let's say to the city, to the state house, back to the city, I don't think you're going to be able to double dip. Where double dipping comes in is when you retire and then you, let's say, work for another company. Or you retire from the city and you go work for the Department of Water and Power, completely separate pension plan. So you're collecting from the city, you have a job with the DWP, which also has good pension benefits. So when you retire, when you vested of that, you're going to collect on that goodie too. But it's one of these things where there's been no discipline there. It's to maybe play on it. It's been very unreasonable in terms of what they've done. It just they don't know how to say no. All they can do is say yes.
Well, when you're an elected official and the union comes after you, you're going to beckon to the union and give them what you want because you're getting that as an elected official. So I think negotiators. I've been in unions all my life, and I always love the negotiator on the other side when my side sits there and complains about him. Well, stop complaining about him. Why don't you just go hire him? He's a better negotiator. He gets what you want for you, right? Stop complaining.
Well, the problem, they talk about money in politics, and they talk about all these big bad corporations. From my perspective, the biggest spenders in the political arena are the big public sector unions. You get the California Teachers Association, and they've spent like $100 million over the last 4 years. You have, in the city of Los Angeles, you have the IBEW 18 that represents the workers at the Department of Water and Power. You have the SEIU and the AFSCME guys who represent the city workers. And it's not only their money, it's the threat of their money. So, Ted, if you vote against me, I'm going to go out there and support your opponent, Mark, here.
Right.
Yes.
And so it's the threat of what's going on. And the other way you see this union power is like when they're negotiating deals. You and I are sitting on the outside. We can go out and say, go to public comment, and you get your minute or 2 minutes saying, I think this stinks. Well, the union bosses are going in there and sitting in the councilman's office. They're part of the negotiating party, and we're the slobs that are paying the bills.
By the time it gets to public comment, the deals have already been made. Because everything's made.
And we're getting the shaft.
Right.
I mean, this recent labor negotiations, which are still rather opaque to me, between the civilian workers, between the cops. We haven't seen the firefighters yet. I mean, these look like pretty fat packages, like 4 or 5% a year, in compensation levels. I mean, I don't know whether that's right or wrong because I haven't seen it, but that's, just looking at the numbers.
Right.
And that's way,
that's way higher than the average person gets.
And the other thing that just really fries me is that there's no evaluations. The city doesn't, benchmark their operations. They're not going to go say, well, Mark, you don't get an annual review. When was the last time you didn't get an annual review in the private sector? It's sort of like, okay, you go into your boss, you say, well, you did a nice job and you could improve here, you can do this. They don't have any of that at the city. It might hurt some, maybe there's too many snowflakes there. I don't know. I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings.
Right.
But and everything is based on seniority as opposed to merit. If you're looking for a job and you want to transfer, the person is not who's the most qualified. It's, or maybe the qualifications are obviously, but it's the seniority levels.
No, but it's always been that way in city government. Even when we've had conversations, as far as teachers' pay is concerned. We often talked about making it merit-based, and the unions have always fought against that. They don't want that. They want it based on seniority.
Tenure-based.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, and I want to tell everybody out there, look, I'm a union man. I've been a union man my whole life. I am pro-labor. I stand behind labor all the time. I think your negotiators are incredible. But what we're discussing right now is what's on the other side of the negotiation table. And when you look at the city officials and how they've driven the cost of living up so high, I understand the drive to raise the public servants up, their pay up, because they do a tremendous amount keeping it going. But what's happening, it does. But what's happening is you brought up with Mayor Eric Garcetti, our mayor. I know you like saying his name, actually, to be truthful with you. Our mayor, and his ability to run the operations as a business person is horrific. It's like you said a couple of times, kind of winging it. And he's driving us into a budget crisis in the future.
And it almost seems like, based on what Jack is saying, when you have construction that's going on, it's like there's no labor cost analysis that's being done. Because if you take a look at what a project costs, you can take a look and you can calculate how many people you're going to need on site to get this job done. And like you said, they're just throwing out a bunch of people. Because I've seen it. Even work looking at road construction, freeway construction, guys standing around scratching their asses.
Oh yeah.
And then they're not doing anything. No. Period.
Well, there was an interesting couple of years ago, back in 2014, they were thinking of putting a half-cent, increasing our sales tax by half a cent to pay for the infrastructure.
I remember that, right.
And, we were all yelling and screaming. Well, Ron Galpern did a report on street services, which queered the deal, because he basically showed that as opposed to, let's say, 80% productivity factor for labor, it was only like 58%. It was a joke. And, and all that's all some jerk like myself would need to just, have a field day with that. Right. And the LA Times would have a field day with that. But, they just don't have the management information systems. These guys are still probably working with, punch cards, for crying out loud, figuring out efficiency. There's no management information systems there. Their bookkeeping, takes forever to get anything done. I mean, try and get a check out of the city for, services done.
I stopped working for the city, doing contracts for them
maybe
because
not,
of that.
Maybe it's not as bad as Illinois or Chicago,
right.
But, it's no day at the beach, and it's really tough doing business with these guys. And
what would you say to the average resident, Angelino? What can they do to pressure our city officials? Okay, is showing up at city council meetings, calling their people. What can be done? What is a solution that everybody can join in on to start holding these people accountable, besides voting them all out and trying again?
Yeah, but voting them all out, that ain't going to happen.
Right.
Unless something really bad happens. They find out that Jose Huizar wasn't the only one that pay to play on the planning side.
Right.
They catch Herb with his fingers in the pie, and a bunch of others, and something along those lines. Where finally people will mobilize. But getting Angelenos to mobilize, we're a bunch of lazy bastards. It's sort of like, okay, where's the latte today? It's sort of like you just 15-20% vote. Maybe 60% will vote in the presidential election because that's sort of the trend. Oh yeah, I'm going to go to the polls. They only go once every 4 years. Right. But and then that's more of a federal thing, and they probably, as you go down the ballot, say, okay, I'll vote for president, maybe I'll vote for senator. Who's this coconut that's running for the Congress, or
Right.
and then you gotta say, well, here's somebody on the school board. What's the school board? They probably can't. They just don't give a sweet one.
No, they don't engage.
So you're going to basically need a crisis to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had a crisis back at Prop 13 in 1975,
Right.
78. 78 it was, but real estate taxes were going crazy, and people finally got pissed off.
fed up.
And 2/3 of them, or something like that. Oh, they got it on the ballot for openers.
Right, they did.
And then 2/3 voted. But maybe there's going to be something along those lines when the spaghetti and meatballs start hitting the fan in Sacramento, or in the city of Los Angeles, pensions start to drown you out. But it's going to have to be a sort of a catalyst.
It's infectious, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
It's like
A catastrophic event
Right.
to make people get off their asses and do something. But
we're coming up on our hard stop on the show right now, and I think we're at a catastrophic occurrence right now, looking just at the homelessness issue, that it's being mischaracterized.
Sure.
$720,000 for a studio to be built for them. We have massive mental health care patients basically walking the streets and killing people, and drug addiction, and I think it's becoming so lawless that the people in the city of Los Angeles are really getting fed up. I think we're looking very close to that movement right now. In this next election in 2020, people need to get up off their butt and really become civically involved and say, this is my city.
Right.
This is
Because-
my
because-
community.
But they're going to say, this is my city, but the politicians are just going to throw money at it. So you have to say, okay, I want you to.
But that's our money they're throwing. That's where we got to own it back.
Yeah, but you got to make sure you're going to. There's a balance there, and so they'll throw your money at it, and they don't care.
They don't care. It's not theirs.
And if they start to clean up the mess, that's fine.
Yes.
Who's going to take them off? Are you going to be? How do you take on the machine? Is basically what it is.
Well,
I've been doing it for a while.
But it's
so.
going to have to start at the ground level. It's going to have to start there, and once it gets started, it's going to have to turn into a groundswell.
Yeah, we need a leader. You need somebody that's going to be charismatic, who's going to be able to, you trust. And I don't see anybody, Republican or Democrat, that's going to, I don't see that person. I mean, I think we
just got wounded heavily right there.
You're all right. You're all right, man.
I mean, I thought Dick Reardon did a very good job on that. I mean, he came
He
into
did.
City
No,
Hall.
he did. I like Dick.
And
yeah.
and he had the money and the resources to sort of start up a campaign.
Right.
And he had a new charter, but he was pounding his head against the wall half the time with those idiots.
On that note, I hate to say it, we have come up to our hard stop. An hour goes by fast, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
Time
Thank you
flies
very
by
much.
having fun.
I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank
on
you very
the
much.
show.
Ted?
Even though a lot of the information is kind of wonky, I want to thank everybody for dialing into us and listening and inviting us into your home, into your computers, into your cars, into your cell phones. And Ted, bring it on home because we have only half a minute left here.
Want to tell the listening audience again, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to tune in next week. And always remember our mantra. Ignorance prevails when rational minds sit back and do nothing. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Tune in next week. We're going to have another exciting show.
Absolutely. You have been listening to Mark Reed and Ted Durden. The Voice of Reason has been brought to you by churchandlaw.com, Honda, Levin and Albandia Trial Lawyers, and Paintball USA. Thank you.